Hello, Sunny Bonani. Welcome to lap 2 of a total 7. Welcome to the Qatar Grand Prix. Welcome to T3 of BrakeAway Racing League action. We have picked things up right in the middle of the action, so to speak. It is a reverse grid order, so the likes of Mfundo, Kaboza would have been starting from the back of the pack. Here comes the Prince of South Africa on the outside of Azuri at the beginning of the second sector. I just want to make sure you have all of the information that you would need. As you can see, it is Skinny Gamer currently in the lead of this race. Azuri is about half a second behind the race leader. And the onrushing Shakes and Kaboza are trying to make sure that they have some sort of a say on the front of the pack before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Welcome to the Lusail International Circuit, a fast-flowing 5.4 kilometer extravaganza. Look at that, the Prince of South Africa now up to second in the running, but Buddha is on the attack as we go on board as a Mercedes driver. It is a drag race, if you will, down the main straight. It's an overtaking opportunity, and the one towards turn 1. Buddha braver on the brakes. Buddha now up to P3, hunting down the Prince of South Africa, who is trying to close that gap, which now stands at less than 2.5 seconds to the front. Welcome if you've just joined us to the third tier of BrakeAway Racing League action. It is looking very, very good. Down at towards the back of the pack, it is Shakes versus Mfundo. The veteran Mfundo in the colors of Mercedes today. On board we go with Shakes, who dives on the inside, which is going to turn into the outside, into this left-hander, and it's a beautiful three-way battle, but Shakes has done it. Shakes is ahead of both Mfundo and Azuri at this particular point. So the Haas driver not having the greatest of races thus far, now down to P7. He was running, hoping to finish among the podium places for this sprint race, but it is not looking like that will be the case. So Shakes is moving and shaking as they have now begun and going towards the end of this third lap. Azuri is falling back because he had dipped out of the lobby, so just got no answer. Azuri now back in the lobby, back in the action, back in the hunt for a decent points finish. He's going to have his work cut out for him all the way down in P8. Back towards the battle for the front is the Prince of South Africa versus Skinny Gamer. Welcome to lap 4 of 7, which the McLaren driver has just begun. Going good, doing well, doing okay. He will absolutely feel. Here it comes now through turn 1, which is quickly turns into 2. It is such a fast and flowing circuit. Just to give you a sense of how things look as far as this championship is concerned, Skinny Gamer would have started towards the front of this sprint race because BrakeAway Racing League, when it's a sprint race, it is a reverse grid order. So the lower you are in the championship, the higher up in a sprint race you would start. Before the start of this race, Skinny Gamer was actually 9th of the championship standings with a total of 12 championship points. The Prince of South Africa was there and thereabout. He was 7th with 25 total championship points up until this particular point. P2 will be very good, but knowing Prince, he's going to want to overtake and get this done as soon as humanly possible. So we will see how the Prince of South Africa's battle will pan out. Now down towards Perk Mille, who's had some bad luck in previous races, but is now looking to keep things good and steady, hunting down Buddha. Oh, heavy on the curb, goes off the track and takes Shakes with him, but thankfully Shakes does not take significant damage. Perk Mille almost makes contact. It's a switcheroo now. Perhaps Shakes was told by the stewards to slow down because that was an illegal overtake. Well, it's yellow flags here, and Fundo has gone through on the both of them. What is going on? Shakes is now slipping further and further away, and he's going to want to get his bearings back together. He's now down to P6. He was moving very well with Shakes as we now hop on board with Perk Mille versus Mfundo. Who is that? It's Buddha, who they've just ghosted through. So Team Mercedes, as far as Buddha is concerned, not having such a great day today. The veteran driver now down to P6. Perk Mille hunting down Mfundo, P3. The battle for the P3 spot is the battle for the final podium spots. If you've just joined us, it's turning into an action-packed race here with just a couple of laps remaining. Perk Mille moving as intently as they possibly can. Now up to P4. So it's Skinny Gamer still in firm control and command of this race in that P1 spot. The Prince of South Africa is pushing as hard as they possibly can to come within DRS of the Skinny Gamer, who has a little bit of a moment on the exit of, I believe that was turn number 11. Or 12, I beg your pardon. This is, of course, the 16th and final corner. And as Skinny does so, it means that the Prince of South Africa is now within touching distance as they send it screaming towards turn number 1. And Prince of South Africa is going to have to bide their time. Further down the pack, it is Shakes versus Kaboza. And it looks like that may yet be done and dusted. Or is it? No. In the drag race, Kaboza has more in the way of straight line speed. Kaboza defends the inside line, which will become the outside now into turn 2. Oh, these Red Bulls make contact. Shakes too eager, sends Kaboza careening off the track. In the same part that he went off track, he almost makes contact. And now he's off the track. And now Kaboza manages somehow by the skin of his teeth to still be keeping Shakes under pressure. Kaboza is flashing as they are now in the penultimate lap of this race. He's going to look to keep it tight going on the outside of the left-hander. Shakes has a bit of a moment, as does Kaboza. Both the Red Bulls not necessarily in the best of shapes at this particular point of the race. On board we go with Kaboza, who takes a lot of curb, a lot of the outside of the track, and he slips further and further away as Shakes now in Sector 2 keeps firm command and control of that P6 spot. It was getting pretty racy there between Kaboza and Shakes, but it is advantage Shakes as we now hop back on checking in with the rest of the drivers. Azuri, I'm not sure if he's back in this lobby, running in P8, just Tendo at the back of the standings. Skinny Gamer versus the Prince of South Africa has been the battle to watch. As you can see, the biggest mover since the start of proceedings has been none other than Mfundo, who's gained 6 places. Has the veteran driver looking very, very good here in this final lap of this race. He may yet consolidate that final podium spot in the Qatar sprint race. Just Tendo, the only driver on a set of mediums, so we can assume that perhaps they might have pitted. They are on 5-lap-old tires compared to the likes of everyone else who is now running on 6-lap-old tires. It's Sector 2 for Skinny Gamer, who is going to bring this sprint race home and possibly claim a memorable result. Esbuda, further down the track, has had another moment, bringing out the yellow flags. As you can see on the track map on the bottom right of your screen, Esbuda slipping down to P7 towards the end of the sprint race. It's going to be a welcome top spot on the sprint race podium at the Lusail International Circuit. Skinny Gamer is now heading towards the 16th and final corner of this track. Looking very, very comfortable. Has a slight twitch. It does not want to give the Prince of South Africa any hope. Remember, the end of the sprint race standings will set the grid for the feature race. It's Skinny Gamer who wins the sprint race. The Prince of South Africa comes home in P2. And what an effort by Mfundo, gaining all those places. P3, and that is the position he will start on the grid. Will be joined on the second row by Perk Mille, who's just crossed the line for P4. Kaboza and Shakes gave us a heck of a battle, but the former will take P5. Shakes will have to settle for P6 when all is said and done. Esbuda will come home and start the feature race in P7, while Azuri and Tendo will make up the final 2 spots. Welcome to Tier 3 of the BrakeAway Racing League. It is the feature race in Qatar. Up next. Here comes Just Tendo to complete their place and the starting grid for the feature race. There it is, folks. And we're looking forward to a beautiful and a brilliant feature race, which will be coming straight up. So do stay tuned to the BrakeAway Racing League. We will have more Tier 3 action next. Eight sprint race points for the winner, Skinny Gamer. The Prince of South Africa gets 7. Mfundo will go home with 6 sprint race points. He'll hope to add to that tally, of course, as will Perk Mille, who has 5. It is 4 for the P5, finishing Kaboza, 3 for Shakes. Buddha takes home 2 points from the sprint. Azuri claims the final point. Just Tendo at the back of the pack. Commiserations there with you, Just Azuri. We see you in the comment section saying he's been having issues as far as connection and just maintaining their place in the lobby. So that is, of course, very, very unfortunate. Sorry about that. We do hope that Azuri can take full control of their car by the start of the feature race, which is coming up next. So please stay tuned here, folks. Azuri, we know what kind of pace you have got, but sadly, we'll quite likely be having to start the feature race in a at a disadvantage all the way down in P8. Definitely Duke is in the comments, as is Don Rabico and Zuri over here. Rabico says, I saw Kaboza's wings. It's bad. So Don Rabico, not feeling too good about Kaboza's prospects at this particular point. Hello, definitely Duke. It's good to see you in the comment section. Can't wait to see you do your thing and race tomorrow and give Tier 2 drivers a heck of a challenge. Definitely Duke, of course, among the contenders looking to stake their claim on a top-tier spot, has been having a very, very good BrakeAway Racing League career, as has Don Rabico, who is currently mired in, one of the fiercest intra-team battles. But let's hop over to this action. It's 5 lights. It's the only time South Africa look forward to the lights going out. We're racing in Qatar. Skinny Gamer versus the Prince of South Africa in the run towards turn number 1. They hold on to those positions. Here comes the onrushing Mfundo, looking to take advantage of any mistakes. They keep hold of that formation, if you will. Oh no, Kaboza is out. We've lost Kaboza. The first retiree of this session, sadly, is out of the Qatar Grand Prix, and Buddha is now fighting to make sure that they can claw their way up the grid. Just Tendo has overtaken Buddha, so it's not so smooth sailing for the veteran driver up towards the front of the pack. The Prince of South Africa is keeping Skinny Gamer under the most intense of pressure. Oh no, look at that. It's almost a double overtake by Prince and Perk Mille on Mfundo. Look at that. It is Shakes that we're on board with, but he does not quite get that overtake done. Mfundo defends stoutly, valiantly, as the Prince of South Africa further ahead tries to apply pressure to the race leader. It is also close here, and there goes Shakes on the inside as Azuri is out of this session as well. The second driver to retire. We've got now 7 active runners. Donovan Lacka. Oh, it's huge contact between Shakes and Mfundo, but both drivers are still running, thankfully. Mfundo will be seething, as will Shakes, who will hope not to have taken too much damage over there as they crash, as they collide. Perk Mille will look to take advantage, and now as they're looking to conclude this final corner of this first lap, it is going to be Perk Mille who takes a conservative approach and lifts off the throttle there, allowing Mfundo and Shakes to give him a little bit of slipstream. And Perk Mille will look to dive on the inside before turn 1, but try as he might, he's not close enough. The Prince of South Africa has taken control and command of this race. Now up to P1 is the Ferrari driver, while Skinny Gamer is looking to keep him under all of the pressure. It's the Prince of South Africa from Skinny Gamer from Mfundo. Shakes is currently P4. Perk Mille and Buddha make up the rest of those positions. It has been an absolutely breathless start as we watch the Skinny Gamer look to possibly reclaim the lead of this race, but he's happy to stay tucked into the slipstream. Mfundo has had a huge moment. Mfundo is absolutely dead still in what looks like the end of the first sector of this track. Mfundo has lost net 2 places, and he will absolutely be reeling at this horrible start. We saw the likes of Shakes make contact with him earlier on, but sadly, he now finds himself all the way down at P5 with a huge gap building, and his teammate for today, Buddha, hunting down to possibly take that spot back. Shakes versus Perk Mille is the next battle that we're going to be watching. On board now, we go with Shakes. They're now making their way. This was turn number 15. Here comes the 16th and final corner. Perk Mille, who was very conservative on the brakes on this corner in the last lap, is of course trying to keep Shakes at bay this time around. Will Shakes have enough pace in the bag to be able to do something significant in the run towards turn 1? He looks on the inside, does Shakes, but Perk Mille is not as brave on the brakes, and there goes Shakes. It's a clean, simple overtake, and Shakes is now up into the podium places. Sadly, Azuri's car has DNF'd, so would not be able to take control of that. So we do commiserate with you on that particular instance. And the race-leading pair of the Prince of South Africa and Skinny Gamer know that they have it all to do with the specter of Shakes hunting them down. 1.5 seconds behind the leading pair is Shakes. This is Skinny Gamer, however, who has lost the race lead and is now 7/10 behind the race-leading Prince of South Africa. That's your situation as far as the tire compounds are concerned. Kaboza had opted for the hards, was the only driver to do so. It's a mixed bag of softs and mediums to begin this 20-lap race here in Qatar. So we'll see how everybody else will fare and when they will opt to come in to the pits at this particular point. 3 laps done, and Shakes is here to stake their claim on a possible race win. Shakes, a very experienced driver who is no stranger to a lot of racing leagues in South Africa. Here he comes now, trying to stake their claim on the race-leading pair, which was slaloming all down the straight. It's going to be Skinny Gamer on the inside of the Prince of South Africa. But it looks like the Prince of South Africa gives him room, and Skinny Gamer not quite close enough to get that move done. It is a 3-way battle for the race lead. It is looking absolutely sensational at this particular point, folks. If you've just joined us, lap 4 of a total 20. They've now going to navigate the end of the first sector. This is turn 6, the hairpin. Shakes is looking to apply the pressure, but Skinny Gamer and the Prince of South Africa holding firm. Drivers in positions 1 and 3 opted to go on the fastest soft tire compound, while Skinny Gamer presumably will go longer on the inside of the left-hander. Oh, Shakes makes contact with yet another driver. This time it's Skinny Gamer, but try as he might, he does not get that overtake done. It's a similar move from Shakes that we saw on the likes of Mfundo earlier on in this sprint race. But did not get that overtake done. They're now all so close together, less than half a second separating all 3 of these cars. We're going to get the front row seats to this 3-way battle. It is Shakes who goes on the outside of this final corner, tucks on to the inside, and ducks into the slipstream of the McLaren driver. Oh, makes contact, and they almost send each other into the wall. What was that by the Skinny Gamer? Shakes gets that move done. He's now up to P2. He might look to tuck into the inside of that Ferrari, but he's not close enough. And Skinny Gamer, who almost sent the Red Bull into a potentially race-ending maneuver into the wall, is still holding on. But Shakes is there and thereabouts, now holding on to that P2 spot. It is the Prince of South Africa still in control of this race, but not quite out of the woods. That is Skinny Gamer behind Shakes, who we're watching on board now. And as you can see, ahead of Shakes, the Prince of South Africa has used up almost all of that battery power just to hang on to the race lead. And Shakes is going to take another dive on the inside. You weren't necessarily aligned with that car. It's another moment of wheel banging there by Shakes, who is taking no prisoners and may find himself in trouble with the stewards. But as I say that, look at the Skinny Gamer, who sends it absolutely on Shakes. It's a sensational battle between these 3. None of these drivers giving an inch. None of these drivers wanting to lose all of that advantage. As Gonti in the comment section says, Skinny Gamer is absolutely messy. He had that moment of contact with Mfundo, of course, and right now he's giving all these headaches to the top 2. Oh, this Skinny Gamer trying to force Shakes to take a super long road, and he goes off the track, does Shakes. Will that be a legal move? Yes, I believe he still had at least 2 of those wheels on track. They make a little bit of contact down in towards turn number 1, and it looks like that Skinny Gamer is going to be the driver currently down to P3. If you look on Skinny Gamer's steering wheel, he's still got significantly more battery, I would assume, compared to the likes of the Prince of South Africa ahead, whose battery power is down to about 10% or less. Yes, it's 37% versus about 10% that the Prince of South Africa currently has as far as battery power is concerned. Folks, it is Shakes in the lead. You can ignore that little lobby glitch that says it's just Tendo currently in the lead of this race. So do make sure that, we're keeping a close eye on that. Whew, what a sensational 3-way battle. We saw Shakes make contact with pretty much each of the contenders that have been fighting for those potentially race-leading spots. But earlier on, it was this man, Mfundo, whose moment of contact, perhaps you can assume that was with Skinny Gamer, found him tumbling down, all the way down to P6. And he's got all that catching up to do. Also started on the soft compound tire there, Mfundo, and is now about 4.5 seconds behind Perk Mile, who is in that P5 spot. Buddha is really struggling at this particular point of the race, almost 30 seconds behind Mfundo, and down in P7. As you can see on the track map on the bottom right of your screen, Buddha is way behind. Only now is going to begin the third sector, while Mfundo in P6 has begun the 7th of a total 20 laps. Let's get back up to the action. Skinny Gamer, Prince of South Africa. How will it go this time round? It's the battle for P2. In this race, Tendo is actually towards the back of the pack, so you can ignore that particular glitch which says Tendo is in the lead of this race. Skinny Gamer, half a second behind the Prince of South Africa. With 7 of a total 20 laps to go, when will Prince and Shakes opt to come into the pits? If you will remember from the Qatar Grand Prix, this particular track in the real world is where a couple of drivers had punctures. Those front left tires take an absolute beating around this track, as Skinny Gamer is going to look to hang on to that advantage. He's now up to that P2 spot behind the race-leading Shakes, and Skinny Gamer gave the Prince of South Africa a wide berth, had absolutely no appetite to come into contact with some of the drivers that he was competing with. So it's going to be another close battle, and as these two battle, Perk Mile is inching closer and closer to the action. Beautiful overhead shot we got over there. It is in the distance, Shakes, who is now approaching turn number 1. And this is the view on board Perk Mile. But the Prince of South Africa is giving Skinny Gamer a hell of a battle. They were side by side. Prince of South Africa went off track, tried, but could not get that overtake done. This is Shakes' race to lose now, says Azuri in the comment section. Meanwhile, Bongani Debo Crocodile predicts Shakes, Skinny, Perk Mile will be the drivers in the top 3. Skinny Gamer is putting on the fight of his life here versus the Prince of South Africa. Has a slight twitch of the steering wheel on the exit of that was turn number 6. Now here they come into 7. Skinny Gamer took a wider line on the entry, and Prince of South Africa loses a little bit of ground. His battery needs a lot more charging in this 3-way battle. This is Perk Mile, who is just in time to have a say on the battle for that podium spot. But we will see how he manages to get that done, if he manages to get that done. Perk Mile is out of the session, lost connection with the lobby, so they will hope to get back in the lobby as soon as they possibly can. They're now lapping just Tendo, are the leading drivers. Shakes comes into the pits on those aging soft tires, as does the Prince of South Africa. It's a fresh set of mediums for Shakes, and it is ditto for the Prince of South Africa, who has done that as well. Mfundo, who had that moment of contact, has opted to stay out on that aging set of softs. 8 laps old soft is that Mfundo has currently got on. Just want to make sure that Perk Mile, not able to resend an invite there, so I do hope that Perk Mile can rejoin the lobby based on earlier invites. This is Mfundo trying to lap just Tendo, who does not make way. They make a little bit of contact. Tendo presumably would be seeing the blue flags, but is still out on the track, still running slowly, and Mfundo just overtakes and laps Tendo at this particular point. And now up to P2, trying to close that gap to some of the front runners. And we'll give you a sense of how much closing down some of these drivers still have to do. Skinny Gamer has yet to come into the pits. It's still those same set of mediums. Has a 5.5 second advantage to Mfundo, but it would have you know that gap is closing, despite Skinny Gamer, in theory, having the longer lasting tires, which would give him, at this particular point, an advantage. Mfundo was closing the gap, but he has now opted to come into the pit as the Mercedes driver to fit what we would assume would be those medium tires. So just Tendo, who has pretty much been lapped by some of the leading drivers at this point, even though the lobby shows him P2, which does not make too much sense, is now up there. Shakes has about 15 and a half seconds to catch up to the race leader, and Shakes makes contact with Tendo. I don't know if Shakes expected Tendo to just simply be ghosted, but that did not happen. They made contact. How much damage would that have cost Shakes then in this battle to surge back to the lead of this race? That gap now shrinking, 13.8 seconds that Shakes has to the leader of this race. The Prince of South Africa versus Perk Mille is the latest battle that we're watching now. These two have just gone past the hairpin. That was turn number 6. It's not going to be the easiest of overtakes. They try and give each other a little bit of room, and it's advantage Prince of South Africa. Perk Mille is going to have to settle for that net P4 spot. So we're just not going to pay too much attention to just Tendo at this particular point, being lapped slowly but surely. I do wonder if Tendo is still in control of their car, or if it has indeed been lapped at this particular point. The Prince of South Africa looking to catch up to Shakes, but got a lot of work to do. Look at that gap, 9.8 seconds. Both of them have pitted at this particular point, and a lot of work for them to do. Mfundo is out of the pits on that fresh set of softs, and yeah, it is a slow-moving Perk Mille who is not in control of their car, having lost connection to the lobby, and it's contact again with just Tendo, who at this point I would also assume perhaps is not in control of their car. Or are there? They're on board with just Tendo. They bang wheels with Mfundo, and well, just Tendo completely lifts off the throttle there. Oh, it says just Tendo is in the pits, even though we saw them running out on track. So yeah, it's definitely a compromised, glitched lobby as far as things that we are seeing. And I would have you know, Kaboza, I think probably because you left, I tried inviting the Tier 3 party, but it did not allow me to do so. It says that the game has been closed. So it's probably because the host, I think when the host leaves, sometimes it doesn't allow us to send invites. I tried. I think it was before some of the leading drivers came into the pits. I tried sending out that invite, but it just did not work. Skinny Gamer has finally come into the pits and will duly be surpassed by Shakes. On the right of your screen, the bottom right, you will see there goes Shakes, making that stop to fit a brand spanking set of hard tires. Surprisingly, with 8 laps of racing to go. Is that a mistake? Is that deliberate? Well, if it's deliberate, it is a certainly questionable position with such a short race to go. It is a punishing track on the tires, but it is a very, very conservative tire choice by Skinny Gamer at this particular point. I'm going to try once again to see. Nope, it's not allowing us to send invites, sadly. So that is potentially that. Perk Mille perhaps not able to rejoin this lobby. It is a Skinny Gamer who's going to try now to catch up to the leading pair, that being the Prince of South Africa and Shakes. It's going to take a lot of doing, but being on the colder, hard compound tires, which do take a while to warm up, he is also going to have his work cut out versus this man, Mfundo, who would have been hoping to be much, much further ahead at this particular point. But sadly, that moment of contact proving very, very costly, and Mfundo is now going to have to have his say on that third and final podium spot. P3 would go a long way in this Drivers' Championship in the third tier. Mfundo currently leads the driver's standings, I would have you know. Mfundo, 37 total points. He came 6th in China. He came 5th in Saudi Arabia and finished P2 in Baku. So if all goes well, a lot of racing still to go. The gap 1.4 seconds between Mfundo and Skinny Gamer. If Mfundo can keep things together, it would be a consecutive finish in the podium places for Mfundo, who has his sights set on nothing less than a promotion back up the tiers and back up to Tier 1, where he would feel he belongs. Brown Boy is currently second in the driver standings on 36 points. Kaboza, third on 28 points. Sikle, who has recently joined the Tier 3 fray and quickly moved up to Tier 2 because some of the other drivers could not accommodate the Tier 2 schedule. He had 26 points, which means Azuri is currently fourth in the driver standings, 25 total points. Fifth in the standings is Perk Mile, also on 25. The Prince of South Africa, who is currently second in this race, is currently occupying the sixth spot in the driver standings. It was a quick yellow flag that we saw out on track, quickly cleared, so the drivers are back out running where they're supposed to. And it's looking very, very good and comfortable for Shakes, who just wants to make a quick work of their Tier 3 career and find themselves progressing also up the BrakeAway Racing League ladder. As you've seen here, folks, it's a very entertaining circuit, especially if there's a lot of action in the run down towards turn number 1. This is Esbuda. Let's hop on instead with Mfundo, Skinny Gamer, and the Prince of South Africa running very, very close to one another. Both Skinny Gamer and Mfundo will be hoping to bridge that gap and make it a DRS battle. Skinny Gamer has already done so in the run towards turn 6, which Mfundo is navigating right now. So Skinny Gamer is going to look to leave Mfundo behind and put the Prince of South Africa under pressure from the Mercedes behind, which is running a one lap fresher set of medium compound tires. On board we go with Skinny Gamer, who almost makes contact with the Prince of South Africa on the exit of, I believe that was turn number 10. Oh, almost making contact once again. He was forced off the track, was the Prince of South Africa. Skinny Gamer still applying the pressure, still keeping that gap to less than half a second, but it extends ever so slightly. And as these two fight, guess who has joined the fray? Guess who is also within DRS in this three-way fight for that P2 spot? It's going to be a beautiful finisher, folks. Shakes has a 20-second buffer, and Fundo has about 9% of their battery remaining. Skinny Gamer will want to make light work of this. Skinny Gamer on the inside of turn number 1. The Prince of South Africa tries to make a switcheroo of it. He tries, he huffs, he puffs, but he does not have enough. You do not have the facilities for that big man, they said on the internet. The Prince of South Africa now under pressure from Mfundo, who is going to give him hell in the run towards turns 4 and 5 before he gets to the hairpin left-hander of turn 6. Mfundo on the hunt versus the Ferrari of the Prince of South Africa. It's Skinny Gamer into the hairpin, Mfundo a little bit wide in the apex compared to the Ferrari ahead, which has a slight twitch of the rear wheels as Mfundo on the exit of 6 tries to apply all the pressure, but he thought about it, not close enough to go and dive for it. Mfundo does not want to risk that car unnecessarily. Now they're in the second sector, and as the Prince of South Africa defends, of course, it is advantage Skinny Gamer. 20% of battery power remaining for the Mercedes driver compared to about 16% that the Prince of South Africa also has. Man, oh man, as definitely Duke asks a pertinent question, how come we haven't seen penalties considering how often some of these guys have gone off track? That's a very, very good one at this particular point. It is a shortened race. I would assume, at the very least, that they do have warnings, minimum. And Skinny Gamer is well and truly out of sight from this pair. Mfundo on the inside of the Ferrari. They bang wheels ever so slightly, and Mfundo is going to hope to hang on to that P3 spot. Prince of South Africa has a marginal advantage, just the tiniest as far as battery power is concerned, navigating the initial tight, twisty turns 3 and 4. Here we go now. I beg your pardon, into turns 4 and 5. The fast-flowing right-handers. And further ahead, of course, Skinny Gamer breaks into the 6. Mfundo a little wide of the apex. The Prince of South Africa, once again, slight twitch of the rear on the exit of that slow corner. Mfundo, by the skin of his teeth, hanging on to that slight slight advantage there in that P3 spot. Beautiful battles we've seen from all of the drivers currently occupying the top 4 spots. And down towards the back, Just Tendo versus Perk Millet, or the ghost of Perk Millet. Well, both drivers, I think we can assume it is the ghost of Perk Millet at this particular point, so not much of a battle. Just Tendo possibly also could have been ghosted at this particular point. The Prince of South Africa, now out of DRS, and Fundo, despite that diminishing battery power, has eked out a 1.2 second buffer, meaning the Prince of South Africa is also just going to need to charge that battery. Both the Ferrari and Mercedes flashing with 3 laps of racing still to go. In control, in command of this race, Shakes, who may yet find himself being summoned to the steward's office, courtesy of some of the earlier shenanigans. Now the midway through the second sector, as Zuri says, you know what, this is too easy for Shakes, who has had plenty of battles over the years, over the iterations of Formula 1 cars and different games that have been played. A 23-second buffer that Shakes has at this particular point. Also, by some margin, the quickest driver on track, currently holding that mantle, 123.775. Quickest driver on track, Skinny Gamer, only 125.5, as is the case with the likes of M. Fundo as well. So the class of the field is Shakes, as the glitch of Just Tendo keeps showing that they're at P4, but that is definitely not the case at this particular point. Or is it? Man, the Prince of South Africa had a moment losing all that ground. I should get back to the interval gap. The Prince of South Africa had a moment there losing all that ground to M. Fundo, who was way down the road at this particular point. Prince of South Africa trying now to move past the ghost, if you will, of Just Tendo, and trying to catch up back to M. Fundo. Look at that gap, 8.5 seconds to M. Fundo. A lot of work to go. He's going to lap Perk Millet at this particular point, who lost connection to the lobby. So ostensibly, we have about 5 cars on track if we include S. Buddha. Tendo and Perk Millet, I think at this particular point, had been surpassed and lapped by most of the leading Cortex, including the Prince of South Africa. And Fundo is going to look to make it a back-to-back P2 at this particular point. 2 laps of racing to go. Skinny Gamer went conservative and opted for the hard tires during their pit stop, with about 8 laps of racing to go. So as far as tire compounds are concerned, it's advantage Skinny Gamer. But as I say that, they go off track. Now here comes M. Fundo. That was the exit of turn 8, I believe. And M. Fundo, as you can see, does not want to risk unnecessary clashes. I beg your pardon. That was turn 15 that they had that moment on. And this is 16. This is M. Fundo. Now on the outside, the Prince of South Africa. Do they leave a little bit of room? They almost banged wheels a little bit over there. M. Fundo draining that battery. It's completely depleted. Skinny Gamer had a little bit of a moment, but had to let M. Fundo pass there, as the Mercedes driver was just not giving an inch at this particular point. Both these drivers down to the scraps as far as remaining battery power is concerned. Both of them virtually flashing. And there goes M. Fundo, who looks very comfortable out on this track. P2 for M. Fundo will be very happy to find himself back among the top 2 positions. But it's a case of what could have been for M. Fundo, knowing, of course, that huge moment between them. And I can assume Shakes, which might have happened off camera, really cost him so much time, so much momentum, so much effort. I want to hear from you, who's been your driver of the day, M. Fundo. What a valiant effort to recover from that huge moment, which cost him so much time, so many positions, now up to that P2 spot. Or is it Shakes, who, despite the aggression, has still eked out a significant advantage. Now about 30 seconds, the gap between the P1 running Shakes and Mfundo, who's currently in that P2 spot? Or is it Skinny Gamer, who gave us some sensational entertainment, now hanging on to that P3 spot, and perhaps will be happy with a podium place when all is said and done? Shakes has already begun the 20th and final lap of this race here in Qatar. He's now midway through the second sector and looking to complete what has been an absolutely dominant race when all is said and done, considering the gap. Skinny Gamer, P3, the Prince of South Africa, had all those moments hanging on to that P4 spot. Just Tendo is in 5th place. As Buddha in that 6th spot. Perk Millet, the ghost thereof, in that 7th and final spot. A moment as we dip our hats to Shakes, who has looked imperious pace-wise, now comes across the line, sends it slaloming across the main straight, and celebrates to win the Qatar Grand Prix. The already lapped Just Tendo will have their race finished. Mfundo now coming towards the line to finish their race, as Buddha, having been lapped, will finish in P6. But here comes Mfundo, almost 30 seconds behind, but still, what an effort, what a fight back to claw his way up through the field and back up to the podium places to cross the line and finish in P2 in Qatar. Skinny Gamer gave us some sensational battles on behalf of Team McLaren. It's going to be a 3rd place finish for him. The Prince of South Africa also gave us so many good moments, both in the sprint and in the race proper. Coming home to finish in that P3 spot. Driver of the day, according to the game, is Shakes. Let us know if you agree or if you would rather that award go to somebody else. Caboza says, I was close to Shakes' FL during the race and in my practice. Perhaps speaking about the times there. Shakes deserves a win for their efforts so far this season. So says Zuri in the comment section. There goes the team members cheering on Shakes, who claims 26 points in this race. And Fundo, that'll be a decent 18 points from this sprint. Skinny Gamer will claim that 3rd spot in this race. The Prince of South Africa, 4 points is decent, all things considered. And that is the situation as far as the entire results of today's race are concerned. It's 29 total points for Shakes and 24 total for Mfundo, who will maintain control and command of this championship. Skinny Gamer, 23 additional points. Good going for him. Prince of South Africa, 19. And then Perk Millet, 11, 10 each for Mfundo and for Espuda, I beg your pardon, and Just Tendo. Well, folks, that was your Tier 3 action. Please tune in to our Tier 2 race right here at the Lusail International Circuit tomorrow, 8 p.m. Central African Time. That has been your race. Thank you, everybody, and good night.